We spent the last two videos picking apart Ravel's sonic alchemy, from those quiet, breathy opening colors to that organ-like sound we built in the last part. But as we head into the home stretch of Boléro, there's still a lot of new things to discover. In this final part, we are looking at the thickened orchestration of the finale. We are going to dive into mechanical voicings, how Ravel hangs notes beneath the melody to create that massive melody texture we know from big bands. The scale transposer, how Divisimate can not only transpose chromatically but also diatonically, adjusting the mechanical voicings on the fly so they always fit the right scale. And the moment where the percussionists finally don't have to wait any longer for their first entrance, just in time for the grand finale. Today we are finishing our reconstruction. We are moving from the microscopic details of overtones to the macroscopic energy of the full orchestra. This is where we see how all the small details and orchestration tricks come together. If you've been following along, you know the drill. If not, the previous parts are linked below. But for now, let's pick up right where we left off and see how this orchestration crosses the finish line. It's about to get very loud and very interesting. Let's dive in. In section 9, we get more of those organ-style mixtures. This time the registration is a bit leaner. There's no third, just octaves and the oboe d'amore playing the fifth. Interestingly, Ravel skipped the local key change we saw in the last video for the two piccolos here for the oboe d'amore. He could have written the oboe d'amore part in B-flat major to save on accidentals, but he stuck with E-flat. My guess, since the oboe d'amore is already a transposing instrument, maybe he figured adding a local key signature on top of that was just asking for confusion during rehearsals. Moving into section 10, the energy actually dips a little as the trombone takes the lead. Boléro is famous for being one giant crescendo, but Ravel doesn't make it perfectly linear. That would eventually get boring. Instead, he crafts a journey up the mountain, but with small hills and valleys along the way, pulling back once in a while to keep us hooked for the next big push. We also get a first here. The strings finally switch from pizzicato to arco. The violas join the snare rhythm using the bow, adding a new layer to that triplet pattern. But that break in density doesn't last long. Section 11 gets much more complex. We've seen Ravel stack overtones above a note, but now he uses a technique that is sometimes called mechanical voicings or close harmony. This became a staple of big band writing a couple of years later. Instead of building a synth sound upward, he's hanging notes below the melody. He follows the scale diatonically. The first couple of bars are in C mixolydian, venturing into variations like mixolydian flat 9. These are scale names more commonly used in jazz theory, but I feel like they really are a good tool for explaining this kind of writing. If you want a dedicated breakdown of those scales, let me know in the comments. The melody starts on B-flat, with a G and an E tucked underneath. That triad structure stays locked, but the quality of the thirds, major or minor, shifts automatically as they move through the scale. We'll look at how to pull this off using the scale transposer in a minute, but let's jump ahead for now. After all that density, Ravel gives us a breather, bringing back the A theme in some lovely open-sounding octaves. Section 13 brings back those mechanical voicings. This time Ravel isn't holding back. He's got the flutes, piccolo, oboes, English horn, clarinets, tenor sax and both violin sections, all thickening the melody into a massive triad. The first part of this melody is in C Lydian. That just means it's like C major, but the fourth degree is raised a semitone, so every F natural becomes an F sharp. In Divisimate, I can keep playing the single melody line just like before and let the software handle the voicings. I used the scale transposer for this. Buckle up, we have to get into counting octaves and scale steps. Let's look at the woodwinds first. As before, I'm playing the melody starting on C4. Taking their respective transpositions into account, that's exactly where the English horn and tenor sax start, so they don't need any transposer plugins at all. Oboe 1 and clarinet 1 start on C5, one octave up. So a standard 12 semitone transposer does the trick here. The piccolo is another octave higher, so I transposed that up 2 octaves. Now, for the actual scale transposers. Flute 1 and 2 are hanging beneath the piccolo on G5 and E5. As soon as you activate Lock to Global Scale, the steps in the transposer switch from half steps to scale steps. An octave isn't 12 steps anymore, it's the total number of notes in your scale. For common scales like major or minor, that's 7 steps. If you were using a pentatonic scale, it would be 5, or 8 for an octatonic scale. You get the idea. First, I set the global scale to Lydian. Since Lydian has 7 steps, to transpose my played C4 up to the G5 for flute 1, I set the transposer to 11. That's 7 steps for the first octave, plus 4 steps to get from C up to G. For flute 2's E5, that's just 2 steps lower, so I set it to 9. Oboe 2 takes the G4, 4 steps up, and clarinet 2 takes the E4, 2 steps up. For the violins, Ravel divides both the firsts and seconds into 4 groups each, but they all play the same material. He likely did this to ensure the small subsections stayed the same size, since there are usually a few more players in the first violin section than the second, and also to even out the spread of notes across both violin sections. As I said before, I don't have dedicated samples for recreating divisi sections, and less so for 4-part divisi. So I make my life easier here and divide the first violins into 2 sections and second violins into the other 2 and call it a day. I still use the chamber string sections for this though. First violins group A is transposed 1 octave up, first violins group B stays as it is. The second violin groups are transposed 4 steps and 2 steps up respectively. Let's hear the melody. Yet another completely different kind of sound here. For the rest of the orchestra, nothing fundamentally new is happening. Just some minor changes in the patterns, so I changed the arpeggiators accordingly. One thing to watch out for, in bar 241 there are some extra notes in the flutes and violins that I'll just pop in manually in the DAW afterward. There's one more specialty here though. The melody starts in Lydian, but as soon as the line drops below G, it shifts to C Ionian, aka C major. That means our F sharp turns back into an F natural. Divisimate can actually automate this switch. I duplicated my preset, changed the scale to Ionian, and then created a multipad. I assigned both presets and set the switch to top note at G3. Now, the second my melody drops below that note, Divisimate swaps the scale for me. This is a really powerful feature that allows the creation of very complex dynamic orchestrations that can change based on various parameters. Here we just use it to automate the scale change. Still pretty handy. We stay in Ionian for the rest of the section, but the harmony still changes similarly to the way it did in previous sections. So I created another duplicate of the preset and changed the arpeggiators accordingly. Alright, let's see it in action. Section 14 brings back the B theme as a massive unison in the melody. By this point we're getting pretty loud. Section 15 repeats the B theme, but now it's back in those thick mechanical voicings. The double bass is finally switched to arco. Almost everyone is playing now, only the tenor sax and the trumpet in D are getting a breather. That's not counting the celesta, which finished its shift back in section 8 and called it a day, or the few percussionists who have to sit through the entire piece just to play a handful of notes in the final bars. Now we are approaching the grand finale. In section 16, we have another 4-part divisi in the first violins. This time we have to commit to it because the second violins are busy playing something else. I used 4 instances of those chamber-sized elite strings here. To compensate for the increased player count, I used a trigger to balance things out by lowering CC11. All the other string sections are divided too. While the basses play simple octaves, the rest of the strings play a guitar-like strumming pattern that mirrors the snare drum. In each section, one half plays a granular version of the rhythm, while the other half plays a stripped-down version that emphasizes the downbeats. It's fascinating how Ravel keeps things sophisticated and three-dimensional even in a section this loud. The woodwinds are just as interesting. The oboes and clarinets take over the snare pattern, but instead of staying on one pitch, they play complementing patterns on 2 different notes. It creates this incredibly dense, shimmering texture. As before, I spotted a few outlier notes in the score that don't fit the pattern perfectly, so I'll just go in and adjust those manually after the recording. At this point, nearly the entire orchestra is active, except for the English horn. We also have a second snare drum now for extra impact. We are close to the maximum here, but Ravel still has a few % of energy left in the tank. This is how that sounds. In section 17, the strings switch to arco double stops, which have way more bite than the strummed pizzicato. The trumpets join the melody and the first trombone is marked fortissimo possibile, literally as loud as humanly possible. Then comes section 18. Here we have an abrupt modulation up a major third to E major, or E mixolydian flat 13 to be specific. This carries us until 6 bars from the end, where the piece finally slams back into C. Now everyone, except the celesta player who's probably gone home by now, is playing, even the English horn. This is also the moment for the 3 most patient people in the room. The players on Piatti, Gran Casa and Tam Tam. They finally get to contribute their 5 or 6 notes, and they are the reason this ending hits as hard as it does. At this point, the score reaches a complexity that can't be recreated in a single Divisimate preset. So I went ahead and created a mock-up of the last part by playing in section by section. Let's wrap it up and have a listen. And that is Boléro by Maurice Ravel. I highly recommend grabbing a score and listening to a few of the legendary recordings out there. Better yet, if you get the chance, go see it live in a concert hall. It's just a completely different experience. I hope you enjoyed this orchestration deep dive. Let me know in the comments which pieces you'd like me to tear apart next. And keep enjoying great music, whether you're listening to the masters or writing your own. And I'll see you in the next video.